Daniel didn't plan to bring anything home that day. He had stopped on the side of a back road, the kind of road where nothing ever happens, and opened his car door just to stretch his legs. But when he turned around and looked into the back seat, the gorilla cub didn't move. It didn't cry. It didn't reach for him. It didn't react at all. It just stared past him, like it had already decided the world wasn't worth responding to. Why wasn't it reacting? What had this animal already been through? Daniel lived alone on the edge of a small rural property. Nothing dramatic about it. A modest house, a long dirt driveway, a husky named Boone who had been his only company for 3 years. He wasn't a vet. He wasn't a wildlife expert. He was just a man who had made a quiet life and mostly kept to himself. Which is exactly why what happened next made no sense, even to him. He had found the cub near the roadside. No mother, no troop, no explanation. Just a small dazed animal sitting in the grass, quiet in a way that wasn't peace. It was the quiet of something that had stopped expecting help. He brought it inside because he didn't know what else to do. He tried everything he could think of: fruit, warm formula from a bottle, a soft cloth nest in the corner of the kitchen. He sat on the floor and spoke quietly, the way you might speak to something that couldn't hear you. The cub refused all of it. It sat in the far corner of the room and stared at nothing. It didn't eat. It didn't drink. It barely moved. Hours passed. Nothing changed. It wasn't just hunger. Something deeper was wrong. And Daniel was running out of things to try. He wasn't saving it anymore. He was watching it fade. And then, the door to the hallway pushed open. Boone had been kept in the other room. Daniel hadn't wanted to overwhelm the cub with too much at once. But Boone had pushed the door open himself. Quietly, slowly, the way he did when he sensed something was wrong. He walked to the center of the room and stopped. He didn't bark. He didn't approach. He just stood there and looked. It was the first time the cub had reacted to anything. Not to Daniel. Not to food. Not to warmth. To the dog. Why the dog? What did the cub see in him that it couldn't find in a human? Boone lay down. Not beside the cub. He kept his distance. He just lowered his big body onto the floor and rested his head on his paws, like he had nowhere else to be. Daniel didn't move. He barely breathed. It took 20 minutes, maybe more, but the cub moved. Across the floor, little by little, until it was sitting close enough to feel the warmth of the dog's body. Not touching, just near. Like it had found the first thing since the roadside that felt safe. That night, for the first time, the cub slept. It had curled up against Boone's side, not tucked underneath him, not held, just close enough that the warmth carried over. The kind of proximity that says, I'm not sure about you yet, but I'm not running. Daniel stood in the doorway and watched them for a long time. He had brought this animal home. He had sat with it for hours. He had tried everything he had, and the cub still hadn't looked at him once. He saved it, but it didn't trust him. The next morning, Daniel came downstairs early. The cub was gone. He went through every room, called out knowing it wouldn't respond to his voice, doing it anyway, found the back door open a crack, just enough for something small to slip through. He went outside into the gray morning light and started searching the yard. They were near the back fence, half hidden in the tall grass. Boone was lying on his side in the mud, completely unbothered. The cub was pressed against him. The relief Daniel felt lasted about 4 seconds. Then it was replaced by something harder to name. The cub hadn't run away. It had gone looking for the dog. Over the following days, a pattern emerged. The cub didn't explore the house on its own. It didn't investigate or wander or play. It followed Boone room to room, hour to hour, with the focused determination of something that had decided this one thing was the only anchor it had. When Boone slept, the cub slept. When Boone went outside, the cub followed. When Boone ate, the cub finally began to eat too. Not much, but something. Was this helping, or was something else happening? One afternoon, Daniel needed to clean the room. He brought Boone outside just for a few minutes and closed the door. The cub lasted 90 seconds. It paced, short circuits, back and forth, its eyes fixed on the door. And then it made a sound, a low, compressed distress call. The first time Daniel had heard its voice at all. He opened the door and let Boone back in. The cub went still immediately, pressed itself against Boone's side and didn't move for an hour. Daniel sat across the room and watched. Every time he tried to reach toward the cub, just to check on it, just a hand extended, it shifted away. Not panicked, not aggressive, just away. Always a little further from him, always a little closer to Boone. Was he losing the animal he was trying to save? It happened by accident. Daniel came in with groceries, backed through the interior door, and the latch caught behind him. Boone was on the other side. He didn't realize immediately. He was putting things away in the kitchen when he heard it. The pacing was faster than before. The sound was more urgent, still quiet, still controlled, but insistent in a way that reached straight into something animal in Daniel's chest. He opened the door. Boone walked through calmly. The cub collided with him at a trot and buried itself against his neck. Daniel stood there for a moment in the hallway. Then he went and sat at the kitchen table and didn't say anything for a long time. The cub refused food again that night, just like day one, as if nothing had changed. 6 weeks in, the cub was stronger. That much was clear. It had put on weight. Its movements were quicker, more deliberate. If you watched it with Boone, you might even have said it looked settled. But it had never once let Daniel touch it. Never once come to him on its own. And Daniel had started making calls. He had spoken to a wildlife coordinator 3 counties over, a woman who had dealt with orphaned great apes before. She was patient, she was kind, and she told him something he hadn't wanted to hear. Gorillas are deeply social animals, not in a general way, in a specific developmental way. Young gorillas learn how to be gorillas by watching other gorillas, 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 by watching other gorillas. They learn social cues, dominance signals, bonds, hierarchies, things that can't be taught by a human, things that can't be learned from a husky. Every week the cub stayed here, she said, was a week it was falling further behind. Keeping it here might be saving its life and ruining its future. He started small, an hour apart in the mornings, then 2 hours. He would put Boone in the yard and sit in the room with the cub himself, not trying to touch it, not trying to force anything, just being there. The cub didn't come to him, but it stopped eating again. He stood in the doorway of that room and looked at the cub in its corner, and he felt the full weight of the thing he was trying to do. Saving it now might destroy it later, but letting it keep going like this might destroy it anyway. There was no good option. There was only less damage, and more damage, and a choice that was going to cost something no matter which way he made it. Boone, for his part, adapted. He had always been a calm dog, the kind that could read a room. He seemed to understand, in whatever way dogs understand things, that something had changed. He would sit just outside the closed door, not pulling at it, not making a sound, just present, in the way he had always been present, patient, warm, unhurried, and somehow that made it worse. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon. The cub had been in the living room and had begun to move toward the hallway, toward Boone's usual spot. Daniel stepped into the doorway, gently. No sudden movement, no raised hands, just his body, quiet and still in the path. The cub stopped. It looked at Daniel, really looked at him, for what might have been the first time, and then it took one step back, and then another. Daniel didn't move for a long time. He wasn't sure what he had just asked it to do, whether it understood, whether any of this was landing anywhere it could reach. He just stood there and let it be hard. And then a few days later, something shifted. No prompting, no closed doors, no intervention. It just walked away, found a patch of sun on the floor and sat in it, alone. Boone watched it from across the room. Didn't follow. Was that growth, or was it something breaking? Was the cub learning independence, or just learning to stop expecting connection? 1 year and 8 months later, the cub, no longer a cub, was living in a managed sanctuary 3 states away. The facility worked with orphaned and rehabilitated great apes. They had a small group, structured social contact, staff who knew what they were doing. By all accounts, the gorilla was doing well, better than expected, given how it had started. It had a name now, not the one Daniel had quietly given it. They used a different one at the facility. But it was the same animal. He'd seen the photos. Daniel had kept Boone. Of course he had. The coordinator had said it wasn't standard practice. Bringing a domestic dog to a rehabilitation facility, introducing it to a gorilla they were actively working to socialize with its own species. It wasn't in any manual. But she had also been doing this long enough to know that not everything worth doing is in the manual. She brought them through to a large enclosed outdoor space and asked Daniel to let the visit unfold naturally. No calling out, no gesturing, just presence. For a moment Daniel didn't recognize it. It was bigger, much bigger. It moved differently, with a weight and a confidence it hadn't had when it fit in his car's back seat. When it turned and caught sight of them, it stopped what it was doing. It didn't rush forward. It stood across the space and looked. That familiar stillness, not the blankness of shock, but the particular quality of an animal that was deciding something. Boone sat down beside Daniel's leg and waited. It came close enough that Daniel could have reached out and touched it. It looked at Boone, really looked. the way it had looked at him all those months ago in that kitchen, and then it did something that made the coordinator beside him go very still. It reached out, one hand, slow, and let its fingers rest on the top of Boone's head for just a moment. Boone didn't move. It didn't stay. It didn't linger. It turned and walked back the way it had come, settled itself in the shade near the other members of its group, and went back to whatever it had been doing before. Like the visit had been important, and also complete. The coordinator said something quietly beside him, that it was a good sign, that kind of calm approach, that it meant the animal was grounded, secure. Daniel nodded. He was thinking about that first night, the cub in the corner, the food it wouldn't take, the way it had turned its face away from him no matter what he did. He was thinking about Boone lying down on that kitchen floor without being asked, in the particular way that some creatures know how to meet another creature's need without making it about themselves. It didn't forget, but it had moved on, and maybe that's what being saved actually looks like, not staying close to the thing that helped you but becoming something that no longer needs to. Sometimes the ones who save us aren't the ones we stay with.